Brian Griese, I saw this on Twitter, so you know it must be true. Apparently, Brian Griese is getting interest around the league as an offensive coordinator.
Who would have thunk it?
I don't know if he's going to like totally leave the 49 or the Kyle Shanahan tree, but there's so many of Kyle Shanahan's disciples around the league that, and so many teams that want Kyle Shanahan's system, that he's now in the mix, apparently, even though he hasn't called plays. Neither had Bobby Slowick. And what Brian Griese has going for him is he handpicked freaking Brock Purdy, along with Steve Slowick, the scout. So maybe he could go with Steve Wilkes. Maybe he could go join, I don't know, Jim Harbaugh somewhere. You think that the Niners are in danger of losing Brian? The Niners could also elevate Brian Griese to offensive coordinator themselves.
I was just about to say that. Okay, so
they could do that.
Yeah, you stepping on my take. So yes, I do agree that he's not going anywhere. We're looking at the success of what what Coach Griese has done thus far, right? And it's amazing. But at the same time, you know, when you start trying to become an offensive coordinator, trying to go to coaches or jobs where you get high profile jobs outside of just position coaches, then that means that you take on some liability. And what happens is that when offensive coordinators start struggling, what holds them up is their resume. Because the first question is who is this guy? Especially if Brian Griese starts struggling. And he just doesn't have the resume in coaching to kind of uphold a position that quick, that early for a coach that new, right? If he was to go somewhere, right? That's a lot of responsibility to put on a guy who literally just started coaching the sport. Not the level, not pro, but Brian Griese came from the NFL to the booth, and then he said, I wanted to give coaching a shot. That's not somebody who you pretty much put the mortgage on if you're a head coach, right? So, and it just shows what it would do is that if he started struggling, it would just glean more onto your decision-making skills as a head coach. I just don't think anybody would take on that much responsibility and No,
keep going. I'm sorry. I was
that much responsibility
in my mind.
Yeah, that much responsibility and actually be prepared to cover up for Brian Griese if and when issues happen. On top of it, he's only got one guy under his belt that he can say, I picked, right? Yeah, you could say it's Brock Purdy, but at the same time, you got a little bit of, you got to take some meat off the bone and get to pick your guy in the 7th round. Cool. What happens? What type of information can you share about how you would draft or develop an entire scheme? I mean, with this amount of time on task of being a coach, you would have to know that the in-depth job interview and the background and vetting that it would take for you to be an offensive coordinator at an NFL team. For Brian Griese to get the job, there would be some elements of what he's talking about in that job that are not his, because it takes time to even develop that type of stuff to be an OC. So I just don't think he's ready. And there's no shame in that. He just started coaching, but he's doing a good job early, but nah.
Whether or not he's ready, like I think what's interesting is, do you want to leave the Niners? When we talked about Adam Peters, we made a case for why he should maybe want to leave the Niners. Like, you can't run this team, and you've been here a long time, you've been in the league a long time, and maybe you want that project that you can start from scratch. Griese, like, you are tied to Purdy, and you've just been in the league a couple years. And if you leave the Niners now and you flop in your next job, like, what's your next move? You could just play yourself out of the league. But if you stay with the Niners, like, you're always going to be associated with Purdy, and your stock will only rise, and you could get promotions here. So it seems to me that, yeah, it's in his interest to stay. Yeah. And any rumors we hear about him potentially becoming an offensive coordinator elsewhere, most likely is leverage for him to get the promotion here, because it's not a guarantee that they just make him an OC after 3 years. There's other guys on the team like Clint Kubiak, who's a pass game coordinator, who could be in line for that kind of a promotion as well. But Brian Griese.
I agree with you. I mean, you know, for what he's done thus far, good on you. You know, I'm happy, but just even from, like, you know, if I was in the Griese household, or if I was like Brian's friend, a coaching friend, I would be like, Coach, why would you try to go out in the wild when you just got cozy here? and you got yourself a quarterback who's high profile. Your name is all over him, and he hasn't necessarily really solidified himself as, a consistent great quarterback in this league. You can have your hands all over that, and at the same time you can get some chops under your belt and then get elevated at the same time while you haven't left your organization. I just kind of feel like a move right now would be a little kind of crazy. It just wouldn't make sense.
Chris Tallarico says the Chargers are too cheap, won't give head coach the support. That's the thing with Harbaugh, is he has a very high profile, expensive coaching staff. It's not just him. It's also the assistant coaches. There'll be guys on his staff making million plus a year. Mm-hmm. So we'll see about the Chargers. Josh Wyatt, is it possible? They can be shamed into doing it since they have Justin Herbert. Like, if you don't want to pay, like, get rid of Justin Herbert and let some other franchise do it right. Otherwise, put a team around him, a staff around him. Josh Wyatt, is it possible one of the reasons offensive production is down around the league is because so many teams are running Kyle's system badly? Why would you want the last moldy apple left on that tree?
Is it possible?
It seems like the Kyle systems are the ones doing well. Miami, Houston, doing pretty well.
Houston's in the league. Miami's in the tournament. Houston's in the tournament.
I would say it's because the Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay scheme has been dominant for like 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and defenses are catching up. Oh, you want to get explosive plays? We're going to play 2 deep safeties. It's a passing league. Okay, we're going to invite you to run the ball. Mm-hmm. They're doing a pretty good job. They've actually made the league a dink and dunk fest, and it's kind of boring sometimes. There's so many checkdowns on every game. It's a checkdown fest.